Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of How the Fuck, the talk show turned podcast where we chat with folks who know what the fuck they're doing and ask them how the fuck they got there. I'm your host, Katie D. Mateus.
I'm also your host, Ben Martin Mooney.
And I'm your thirdliest host, Zeki Alakaya.
So today we are joined by Susan Eisenberg, professional voiceover artist known known for a lot of things, but for animation and commercial work, I think maybe best known for your voice as Wonder Woman, and also known as Princess Diana in the acclaimed Justice League and Justice League Unlimited television series. You've also been in other cartoons like the Jackie Chan Adventures, the Superhero Squad, and video games. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, Jack 2, Daxter, Elder Scrolls 5. For those who don't know, that's Skyrim specifically. Mass Effect 3 and Destiny, a lot of which I have played. So unwittingly, I am very familiar with your voice.
Yeah, so many of these. I'm like, this is just the classics of my childhood right here. So, Susan.
Yes.
How the fuck?
How the fuck? Well, it's funny because you said people who have, arrived basically and, gotten to where they wanted to go. And I'd say before I start how it's still a work in progress. We can touch on this later, but I don't think you ever get to the point as, as an actor, where you think, okay, I'm here. Finally, at long last, I'm here. And from now on, smooth sailing ahead. I mean, there's always the point where you're looking for your next job. But how I got to where I am now was a dream. No, so I used to do advertising for my dad's business back when I was in high school, and it was for a radio program. My dad owned a department store, and I would go on the radio advertising for his business. And I was really young, I mean, 15. And so I knew at that moment in time that you could do something with your voice. And I think I tucked that away somewhere. And then when I moved out from the East Coast to Los Angeles to, try to make this all real, I'd started as an actor on camera and really soon realized it wasn't my strength and it wasn't something I liked. And I think if I had done it and fallen in love with it, it would have been very different, but I did it and did not like it. So then I unpacked that little morsel of, well, I can do the voice thing, because that's always been something I've managed to do, and went back and did more classes and learned how to do voiceover, and then just started saying yes to everything. Literally, do you want to do the Back to the Future ride, narrate the Back to the Future ride at Universal Studios? Do you want to narrate the Showa Foundation that's starting to happen? Do you want, just everything people said, whether it paid money, big money, small money, I said yes to. And that's, then I had a little audition for a little show called The Justice League. And then everything changed, of course. But, up until that point, it was just, saying yes to everything, getting in front of a microphone and learning my craft. Still learning my craft.
Yeah.
Actually.
I mean, I feel like that's for every creative. You never stop learning.
100%.
So I'm curious. I know that you have your most prolific role, obviously, the one that everyone knows you for. But what has been your favorite thing? Not even, I don't even want to say role, because you could say, like, I really liked narrating the ride at Universal. But like, what has been your favorite gig that you have had in your whole career?
It's not really a contest. It is Diana. It is Diana from Justice League, because the whole thing was just surreal. I mean, how long has it been? And I still pinch myself that I got that job. There was nothing about wasn't connected. I didn't, it wasn't like I had this huge resume. I had guest starred on a few animated series, but I'd never, been the lead or one of the leads. And it was terrifying getting that job, but it was the one I learned the most from, and it was the most professionally gratifying in terms of it giving me this life where people come up to me and tell me I was a part of their childhood, and that when they read a comic book, that he can hear my voice and Maria's and George's and Kevin's. That is an extraordinary gift, and I never ever ever take it for granted. So that's what that gave me. And I loved Jackie Chan. It was such a smart show. It was funny. It was a
Mm,
delight. It was just delightful. But Diana, aka Wonder Woman, she's the love of
mm.
my life at this point. Well, Oliver, my dog, is the love of my life.
Oliver's gonna hear you
He is
and come into the room and
He's in the other. Now he's
oh,
not in
good.
the room because I didn't want him intervening in this. But yeah, so no, Diana, Justice League, and you do know, the people who worked on that show, the people that we got to be directed by, and Andrea Romano
Mm,
and Bruce Timm, who created that version of Wonder Woman, and the writers, the directors. You know, it was like the best of the
yeah.
best. It's like it spoils you. I mean, you start out on Broadway.
Gosh, yeah, that's a really good analogy for sure.
Wow. Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of Diana and
Yeah.
sort of stepping into that role as somebody who is like relatively speaking, sort of like new on the like sort of new kid on the block in some ways. Um,
Hmm.
I guess this is kind of a two-part question that started as a one-part question, but then after hearing you talk about it a little bit, there's sort of like a second half. So first, was it hard to step into that role and sort of own a character that is so, like so beloved to even to
Uh-huh.
folks who maybe don't identify as comic book fans? If you ask them like, do you like Wonder Woman, the likelihood is
No, she's iconic.
yeah,
I mean, people know. Yeah, she's
yeah.
iconic. Yep.
So I guess let's maybe start with that part. Like, was it hard to step into those boots?
It wasn't hard to step into doing Diana because it wasn't like I was asked to be Linda Carter part two. It wasn't like somebody, it was original,
Mm,
so there was a drawing of her, and I was told vocally what I needed to do, and that I needed to bring, her strength, and that aspect of her, and also the aspect of her that's a princess, and those two things always had to be in play.
Mm.
So that I had to do. The job itself was remarkably intimidating. It was, I think I may have started to feel comfortable, like maybe the like second to last session. I mean, it was a lot of heavy hitters in the room. Kevin, of course, had already done Batman the animated series. George was a well-known on-camera actor. Carl Lumley. I mean, hello. These people, Maria, they're all Phil Lamar, Michael Rosenbaum. Need I go on? I mean, it was just so intimidating to be in that room because, first of all, I wasn't on camera. People didn't know me, like they knew so much of the other cast, and it was nerve wracking. It was nerve wracking. It was a lot of learning as I go. But doing that role wasn't scary because, like I said, it wasn't like I had to live up to anyone's expectation because she was new.
mm.
She was new, and it was a new show. And I think people were excited that it was going to be there on television. And so, I mean, I think if I had, people had hated my version of her, then I would have known about it. But I didn't feel that pressure. I didn't feel that. Probably today I'd feel a lot more because of social media, which
Mm.
wasn't really an issue, you know.
That's such a good point, actually. I can't even imagine, when you started out being able to sort of I don't wanna say be in a bubble because it's not a bubble, right? But you are a little bit more buffered
It was kind
from
of a bubble. I mean, it really
okay,
was.
let's call it a bubble.
You're at the studio, you're at Warner Brothers, by the way, which was at the time, at the Sherman Oaks Galleria in Sherman Oaks, California. It was at a mall. I mean, it was weird. And you are in a bubble, you're there, and then you go home. And you would do an occasional Comic-Con, but you didn't have direct interactions with the
Mm,
fans. like you do now, which is, I think, one of the gifts of social media. I mean, that's why I will never lament it, because it has given me a conversation that I started
Mm,
in 2013, and I'm still in it.
Mhm.
That conversation with the fans. So,
yeah.
but we didn't have any idea that it was that I, that 20 years later we'd be still talking about it. I mean, we just got the actors we got exceedingly lucky by that
Yeah.
project.
Ben, I know you had a second
Yeah.
part to your question. I want to make sure that you can
Yes.
ask it.
I was going to. So this was. I guess this is sort of like almost moving more into the like the technical realm. But like, is there something like a lesson that you learned early on in Wonder Woman that has like sort of stuck with you, or something that you've taken into everything else that you've done since? And that might be like a really broad question, given how how much time you spent playing her. Um,
Just even small things like not talking over each other. In acting, you tend to talk over each other, and that's great and it's natural. In animation, you never do that. Everything has to be edited very precisely. So you're never talking over somebody's dialogue. It has to be able to be cut. um, Turning pages while you're recording. There's a way to turn the page, so that the mic doesn't pick up you turning the
Mm,
page. You all do it together if you are in sync as a group. But just like things like that. And then ADR, additional dialogue recording. So once it's to picture, because when we recorded, there was no picture, right? We were lucky in that there was a real budget on our show. So we got called back in to do the ADR, and we would see the picture. And it was, I have to tell you, it's, thrilling to actually see these images come to life and these scenes come to life. And learning that, the grunting, the sounds, the efforts, right? The being punched, the punching, the falling, the doing all of that, that is it's harder than it looks. And it was,
I can imagine.
thank God for Andrea Romano, because she took me by the hand, and I think she probably in the beginning, filled in for me and did a few of those. Because, it was, I mean, I don't think I had done ADR to that degree. That was so physical. And I mean, I'd never done a superhero before.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that was learning on the job. And obviously, I've taken it everywhere I've ever gone. And I'd say the biggest takeaway is it's like that muscle, that using your imagination. So what does the mascara look like before you see the mascara,
Mhm.
the image of
Mm,
it? You're reading about it in a script. What do these things look like? What does the watchtower look like? And I have taken that and trying to put myself in those spaces with those people in that universe. I have taken that with every video game I've ever done, because most of these video games you will never see the final result. You have in Skyrim, Destiny, all of these games, you're just thrown into this universe and you have to make it real for yourself. And if you have a director that's terrific, he or she can paint the picture for you, but at the end of the day, it's your imagination creating it for yourself.
I already have more questions just from your
You know
answer
what?
there.
And cut me off, because I can get very passionate about this. And so, if any point I just go on for too long and you
No,
make
no, no,
No,
no.
no, no, no. This is great. I'm gonna ask one of them now and save one for later, but I am
okay,
genuinely curious.
yeah.
How do you save your voice when you're doing those sort of like grunts and screams and sounds that are not just talk, and even when you are talking for, days on end, like that's a lot on your vocal cords. Do you have anything that you do to kind of help with that, especially when you're, screaming or yelling or doing things that are a little bit more taxing?
It takes a toll. It takes a toll. I mean, after sessions, especially for video games, which are 4-hour sessions, it takes a toll. So then you are hoarse for a couple of days after. I mean, you can drink tea and honey. There are things you can take. There are lozenges. There are coats, throat coats, that they're in the booth for you. And there are vocal exercises you can warm up. But most of the time when it's been really arduous, I'm hoarse after. And I've had sessions where I've said, not Justice League, because that was never that arduous, but video games have been. And I've had video game sessions where I'm like, you know what, I'm out. I'm not doing the other dragon, because you know what? I don't need the money that bad. If I lose my voice, I'm not going to do it. So, you have to stand up for yourself too.
Yeah.
And thankfully we have a union that helps us do that.
Yeah,
But
that's your tool. Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah.
Yep. It is certainly, and and I'm really aware of it. If I go to a restaurant that's very noisy, I mean, pre-COVID, I don't go to restaurants anymore. But when just not talking above people, above music, really just being like, I'm not going to partake in this because I
Mm,
need to rest my voice because I have a session on Tuesday.
yeah.
You just have to, look out for
Mm.
yourself.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of leads into, with all of this industry talk specifically, and you know, as
As
you
you
take a
take a
sip
sip
of
of
your
your
water,
water.
of course. Um,
It's so true.
I guess, like, while we're pulling the curtain back and getting a real like lens into what it's like being a voice actor, what is something that you wish that people understood a little bit more about the industry in general?
That the actor has very little power.
Mm,
People always ask me, am I going to be in this, or am I going to be that, or am I going to voice this character in this project? I have no say in
Hmm.
that.
yeah.
No say whatsoever. If I did, my career would have been very different. There are certainly projects that I would have loved to have done, but I didn't get never mind the job, but I didn't even get a chance to audition for it. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing, and that it's still, we're all hustling.
Hmm.
We're all hustling, and it is generational. There is an entire generation that's coming up after me of voiceover talent, and they'll do it differently, and they'll have their own way, and so you're just, again, hustle. It's
Yeah.
just a hustle, and
Yeah.
it's like any um, independent contractor, any artist, anybody who works for himself or herself. You always have to get the next job. I mean, yes, if you're at a certain level and you do, like, you know 1400 different voices. I mean, you can go from being the raccoon to the queen, but I've never been a raccoon. That's
Yeah.
not, that's never, that's never been my thing. And and that's okay. That's okay that it's not my thing. There are plenty of other people
Plenty
that
of
do.
raccoons out there.
Oh my God. I mean, seriously, and they're brilliant at it. And I'll leave the raccoon thing to them, for them. So yeah, I mean, I just think that at my level, it's never been, you know, easy. It's always been um, looking for the next job, and thankfully you have agents that help you do
Yeah.
that.
Is that also kind of something that, like, at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned never saying no? And is that
Hmm.
also like part of that, where it's you don't want the ball to stop rolling. So you don't want those jobs to stop. So you figure you keep going at it, you get into the next one and the next one and the next one, and it just snowballs a little bit. Is that something that kind of plays into that?
It does. It does in some ways. I will say I say no a lot now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be the soldier in a video game. If the character doesn't have a name, I'm not interested in that at this stage.
Yeah.
It's video games are notoriously not lucrative unless it's something where you're in the game a lot, you're doing a lot of sessions, and you're also getting more than scale for a video game is very little money, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of vocal work, so you have to really want it. So I don't say yes as much as I used to, but I will say that so many of my jobs in the last 10 years I've gotten because of my relationships. It's not so much the auditioning as it was
Okay.
in the beginning. Now it's because so many people I came up with are successful. They're writing video games. They were fans of the Justice League, and now they're writing movies, animated features, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's never, you're never going to be as popular as a big celebrity will be. There's voiceover actors, and then there's celebrity voiceover actors, and it's a big difference. Big, huge.
You know, I feel like that kind of dovetails a little bit into what we were chatting about before we went live, which is I think that people have a conception about what it means to be a successful VO actor and
Mhm.
how that means, you know, you never have to worry about work again. Like you were freaking Wonder Woman. Like, of course, just things are going to fall into your lap all the time because that's such a well-known character from such a beloved series. And I know coming from a household with a creative parent that that is not the case, but like I would love to hear you sort of talk a little bit about what that's like for you and what your experience is, you know, finding work and how there are ups and downs and that sort of thing.
Oh, there for sure. And I don't think anyone would ever tell you there aren't ups and downs and there aren't huge successes. And then, times where you're just like, God, it's been a long time since I've worked. Phew! You know, um, I mean, we're lucky because during COVID, we were able to work from home. I just had to figure out how to set everything up and I had to figure out how to record myself and edit myself. So didn't know all of that before COVID, know it now. So have a different skill set, which is a good thing. But yeah, oh my God. I mean, I use the word hustle. That's what it is. I mean, at my level, yes, people do know me. And I think, yes, they do know me. But, there are a lot of exceedingly talented people out there. And you have to feel like you bring something that's unique to the table. And sometimes that belief system can wane.
Hmm.
Mm,
You can lose confidence, especially if you're not working. It's very hard to feel puff puff, when you haven't been in a studio in a while. So you have to just keep yourself going and keep yourself believing that you deserve a place at that table. You've earned a place at that table, and don't take yourself out of the game. Just keep plugging away, which is what I've had to do. I mean, if I were running the show, we would have had a Justice League reunion 10 years ago. That's been something I've been asking for
oh,
forever. Hashtag JL reunion.
everyone get it trending.
Twitter's not that broken yet.
How we've never been reunited since the show ended, I'll never, ever, ever
That's
understand.
wild. I didn't even know that. I just kind of assumed that because it was
Never.
such a big hit that there would have been something.
Yeah, even on Young Justice, it wasn't the full group of people ever.
I mean, the remake. I mean, the
The,
continuation of Young Justice.
yeah, the
Yeah,
continuation. Yeah.
but I was so happy for those fans because they got
Mm,
that. I was envious and I was so overjoyed because they did it, and
mm.
that is a tough boulder to push up that mountain. I mean, God bless them. God bless them. Anyway, so that's I mean, I hope I answered your question.
Mhm.
It's just constantly looking for work, and some jobs come easily and they're like such a gift because the person and the creator said, hey, you know I've wanted to work with you for a long time, come work with me on this. And then other times you're just like, God, how do I get a job in this town? it's
Yeah.
it's it's tough. It's tough. Your dad knows.
Yeah, I know. I know.
And
And I
he's an
think
established extraordinary writer, and it's
and
it's hard.
that's why I think it's so important to talk about because I do feel like people who don't have a lot of experience in any kind of creative field, especially as like someone who works for themselves,
Hmm.
doesn't there is a understanding that isn't always there about the fact that even if everyone knows you and loves you and you have fans and you have been in successful things, like that does not guarantee you work ever.
No.
And that's not to deter anyone ever from entering the creative space because it's, I mean, you can speak to that. I
Well, but that's what I was going to say. People ask me all the time, I've heard it's really competitive. I heard it's really hard to bring. And, if it's the love of your life,
Mm,
it's your passion, go for it. I moved out to LA when I was just out of college. I didn't know a soul. It was, a conversation with my mother when, talking about it. And she said, you don't want to be 50. Ha! And I said that. I did that out loud, right?
We
yes,
can we
that
can
was
edit that out in
incredible.
post if you want.
Yeah, we can totally fix that.
Didn't want to be 30.
Thank you. You don't want to be 50 and be regretful. And you don't want to be 35, Susan, and
Yeah.
feel regret. And I'm like, I think that you have to try. I never, ever, ever discourage people. In fact, I've taught voiceover, and, sometimes other teachers will be like, really, that guy wasn't very good, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you never know. You never know. I don't want anyone to waste his or her time, but at the same time, if you love it and you feel you can really achieve something, my God, you have to go. But in
Yeah.
any field, you
Yeah.
just go for
Yeah.
it.
That is actually a
You
perfect
know?
segue into our next question. So, we've now talked about keep grinding, keep looking for work, and then don't get discouraged when things
Mhm.
don't just sort of like fall into your lap, because that's right.
And they won't. That's the thing. There will be times when you're not working, and you just have to ride that time. It's hard. It's hard, especially since we define so much of our self
Yeah.
esteem is wrapped up in our work. And so if you're not working, it takes a hit. But at the same time, I couldn't do 9 to 5. I couldn't know. I couldn't live with that structure. It's not in my DNA. It would make me insane. So I didn't mean to interrupt, Ben, but just yeah.
No, 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 that's quite all right. Yeah. So I was gonna say, I guess between those two things, is there, or maybe in addition to those two things, is there something a piece of advice that you would give to someone who is just starting out in the
Um,
industry?
Take acting classes. Just
Mm,
be. That's primary. Be an actor. Focus on that craft, and also improv. Just develop skills that you can bring into that room. You may not be called upon to use them, improv especially, because you can't ad lib a script. I mean, if you're reading a script in a room that a writer worked really hard to come up with, you're not just like, I'm going to change his dialogue. No, no, you're not.
that line was subpar. Let me
Right,
just change it
right,
up real quick.
exactly. And I don't think Diana would say this in this moment. No, you're not doing that.
Writers in the back throwing things around the
Right? No,
room.
you're not. None of that. But you want to have that capacity to just go into a room and
Mm,
play. And the more honed your craft is, the more confidence you'll have. It took me a long time to feel confident, and I wish I could tell my younger self, don't go brunette. No, that's not it. No, no, wait a minute. Hold on. Tell my younger self, like, you're doing good.
mm,
You're doing good. You're fine.
Mm,
And take as many classes as you can. And because you want to feel like I've got this.
mm.
I'm open to learning. I'm opening to always getting better. But at the same time, I have a skill, and I know how to do
Yeah.
this. So classes, and voiceover classes, because there are voiceover classes. And when I started out, I took them at UCLA, and people at the time were like, what's voiceover? When I would tell them I'm doing voice,
Hmm.
had no idea. Now everyone knows what voiceover is. Everyone wants to do it. And everyone is like, oh, so do you do promos? Do you do animation? And I'm like, what?
You know,
How do you know all that?
that brings up another question, which is if you compare the someone starting out in the industry now to someone starting out
Yeah.
when you were starting out,
Yeah.
it's very different, but like what are those core differences? And I'm sure that one of them is just that there are more voiceover actors.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess like what other things, like what other trends in the industry have you noticed in the 5 years you've been doing this for?
Katie, it's only been
I
5 years,
know.
so it's hard for me to, be general about it. But in the years I've been doing it, there are a lot more people doing it, and I think one of the biggest differences, you don't have to live in LA and Chicago and New York to do it.
Mm,
In the beginning, if you weren't in those three hubs, good luck. Good luck. Now you don't. You can be anywhere. You can be anywhere, and you can build yourself a little studio, and you can record from your house in
I
Idaho.
have a kind of spicy
Um,
question. Do you think
yes,
that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it just is. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? I just think it is what it is. It's like things are going to evolve,
Mm.
and they're going to change. And I think as somebody who's maybe used to doing it the old way, you have to change with it, or else you're
Yeah.
you're stuck. and it's going to just pass you by. I think it's cool that you can do it anywhere. I love that you can be anywhere and you don't have to be in LA if you don't want to be in LA. Now, once in a while I'll read something and it'll say you must be in LA to audition for this because we're recording in LA, but most things, so many things are done remotely, especially, a lot of commercials are done
Mm.
remotely. So and animation and video games. I can't tell you how much I've recorded in my little closet there. Um, and so that's a huge change. And also, we were talking a little bit before we started recording. Tastes have changed. So where my voice when I started, I think my style of voiceover was much more popular then. What's very popular now is somebody who doesn't sound like a professional,
Mm.
somebody who sounds like you just found them walking down the street. There's no presentation, to what they're doing, and they're just and they have like a very raspy, throaty sound, and they just sound like they're talking
Hmm.
to, and that wasn't how when I was coming up. I always sounded a little bit polished and that's not in style now at all. So for me, booking commercials has changed quite a bit because they're looking for that edgier, younger sound.
Hmm. So interesting. Just the way that things shift and change, and how, like, you would think of someone who is polished as having a lot of training, but it's like now you have to be trained to be unpolished in the right way.
And it's really, it's so stunning is how freaking hard it is to get out of that groove,
Yeah.
because I've done it my whole career and made a living doing it, and then being told, yeah, that thing that you do that you've made a living at, that's we don't want you to stop doing that and do this other thing. And I have spent so much time in my booth, and I'm just like, it's harder than it sounds to sound natural.
I'm sure.
um and it's been challenging. I'm almost there, Katie, almost.
I believe in you. You're gonna get it. I promise.
Yeah, by the
Damn,
point you hit, 7 years in the industry, you'll have
Yeah,
it
I'm
nailed
hoping.
down.
still very fresh.
Yeah, yeah.
You'll get it.
Fresh.
Well before
Yeah. Oh,
35.
yeah. Well before
Yeah,
35. You'll be
yeah, yeah, yeah.
fine.
I had a question about like having, you know, what you thought were some of the most important traits here, but I think we've like really talked about a lot of it, not purposely through this question, but you've
Right.
mentioned, having the curiosity to keep learning and being
Mhm.
fluid enough to be open to different styles and different mediums that you're working in, and adapt, and the adaptability, like being able to evolve and change.
Mhm.
Is there any other secret ingredient to the secret sauce that brings that success in this field? Or, I feel like just talking through all these other questions in this conversation, we've really kind of painted a picture about what it takes to be successful, and especially with that other question that I'd asked, with like being able to just keep rolling with it and keep looking and stuff like that. Is there anything else that you would be able to kind of add on top of that to make it?
Besides luck, because we know luck's a
Yeah,
factor.
and there's definitely like the right time, right place. That's always a thing.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, I, yeah. I would say there is no secret sauce,
Mm.
and I would say that that's it. We're all just
Yeah.
trying, and it's not to say that some people aren't at a point where the phone rings and they get the call and it's just an offer. They don't have to audition. I've been lucky enough a few times in my career where I don't have to audition for it. But more times than not, you do. And I think somebody said, what are you most proud of in your career? And I said, just still being here and still
Hmm.
trying,
Mm.
because that's the truth. I don't have the answers. I have, all the questions too. And I just keep trying. And so I would say to anybody out there, keep trying, especially if you feel like you can
Hmm.
do it. If I didn't think I had something to offer, I would have given it up, you know, right after COVID, because things changed so
Mm.
dramatically, it would have been a good time to be like, all right, maybe this is the end. But I still feel like I have something to bring to the table. I still want to do it. I still get giddy when I'm in front of a mic and I get like it's a fresh script and I have to break it down and, make it come off the page. That still thrills me, but I don't think there's a secret sauce
Mm.
except, being, just being diligent and showing up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, I think that that's really the case for everything in any kind of
Right,
creative field, and even in non-creative fields, it's about constantly being like, I'm not going to give up on this thing. I'm going to
right.
take the classes and go to the auditions. And I mean, I don't know if you said this, but being able to handle rejection, I think, is
Yeah.
also a
It's
piece.
hard.
Yeah.
Mm.
Hard. But the thing with voiceover is, you're not told you're not pretty enough. You're too fat. You're too skinny. You're too short. You're not told any of that. You're not told anything, by the way.
Hmm. You
With
don't get any
with on
feedback?
no,
Wow.
Wow.
never, never.
Hmm. Oh,
Mm-mm.
Ben doesn't like that at
That was
all.
just yeah.
And by the way, the great thing about it's like online, it's like dating. It's like y- you you just keep going because there's like all these auditions coming in. So it's like next, 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 next. Thankfully, you without that it would really be very difficult. But you just keep moving,
Wow.
and once in a while there'll be something I'm like, wow, I really thought I got that. I really thought. But most of the time, and then you hear it on television and sometimes you're like, wow, she is phenomenal. No wonder she got it. Mwah, well done. And then other times you're like, yikes.
What? Who did they know? Like, what
What?
relationship did they have?
What? It's like really,
Whose
it's
daughter is that?
right. It's weird. It's weird that she got that job. So you just never know. But and a lot of times in the audition they'll give you a reference that they want, and this is something that has gotten very annoying. They'll tell you they want you to sound like Scarlett Johansson or Julia Roberts or Susan Sarandon, and it happens all the
Hmm.
time. And they'll even give you a voice reference, sometimes with the person who probably just did the commercial before, and she's terrific. And you're like, you have a gem here.
Mm.
Rehire that woman. She's
Oh.
phenomenal. That's another thing that's changed. You don't have these jobs, right, where you get a gig and you have it for 5 years and you can pay your kids college tuition. That rarely exists anymore. There is tremendous turnover.
Hmm.
So they're always looking for the next one. And when I hear who the woman who's done it before, I'm like, she's dynamite. You're a fool.
Yeah.
You're a fool because she's so good. And I mean, I can do it and I'll bring my take to it, but wow, you've got magic here. Just keep going with her. So yeah, that's a big difference. I didn't mention that earlier, but that's a big difference in terms of the industry changing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Hmm.
I wonder, do
Hmm.
you know why that is, or is it just something that you have noticed and just kind of accepted as a way that the industry is moving?
I think it's the way advertising has
Mm.
changed, because so much of what I'm talking about right now is
Yes,
advertising. It's
Mhm.
commercials.
not, yeah, it's commercials. And, the attention span of the audience and things are quick and they have to be changing and rapid, rapid, rapid. And, there used to be a time where you'd have a ad campaign for 2 to 5 years.
Wow.
And they knew your voice. They recognized it as the voice of.
Mm.
I did Salvation Army, I think the voice of Salvation Army for maybe 15 years.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Mm. All their commercials and radio. Yeah, television, radio. Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I'm putting on my marketing hat right now because my day job is a
Yeah.
marketer. From a brand
Yeah.
and marketing perspective, I don't know why you wouldn't want to have like auditory brand recognition with a voice. That makes no sense to me.
I think they're always looking for the hot new thing.
Yeah, I guess so.
And
Hmm.
a lot of the time that's celebrity because things are so
Yeah.
celebrity driven, which is why every spec has a celebrity that they want you to sound like in attitude or in voice. And I just think that sucks the creativity out of anyone.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to just bring whatever you're bringing, bring it. Don't tell me to be somebody else, because if you want me to be like her, then get
And hire
her.
her. Yeah.
Like, dish out the money, and get her. But don't ask me to be her. That's not who I am. And I think that's just what is going on. So you have to put up with that. And most voiceover jobs are not collaborative. It's I think one of the few jobs I ever had that was Salvation Army, because I worked with them for so long. They knew me. The writers would write for me. I could put my 2 cents in. If I was reading something, I could say, you know what? I think if and they'd be like, do it. But most stuff, Justice League, not collaborative. I mean, commercials, not collaborative. It's not you and the writer and the director, and you're all working in together. It's their vision, and you're there. That's your job, to see their vision come to life.
Mm.
That's your job, but it's not yours. So, I don't want to be a buzzkill about it, but that was like kind of weird for me when I
Mhm.
started. It's like, thought like, we'll put on a show. I'll be the voice talent. You go get the props. And it's like, yeah,
It's not how it
no,
not how it goes at
no,
all.
no, not really.
I am curious. So, I mean, you've done commercial, you've done animation, you've done video games. How are those 3 mediums, for lack of a better word, different when it comes to recording content for them?
Well, commercial, you're not there for that
Yeah.
long. I mean, you go in, and if you're lucky, you bang it out, and you nail it, within a few takes, and it's great. With animation, you're there. We were so lucky with Justice League because we got to rehearse it. So we got to sit in the room with everybody. We were always together, and we got to read through the script, and Andrea would be there and
Is that
painting.
abnormal for animation?
I don't think it's abnormal, but I don't think casts aren't together anymore like they
Mm.
used to be. I mean, I did Masters of the Universe with Kevin Smith, and I recorded everything from my closet.
Oh.
Yeah, I think the first 2 sessions I did in studio, and then the rest of that season, and I did it in my closet. And
Mm.
it's weird. It's weird. So you don't have the camaraderie. So that, and then video games, you're by yourself, and it's lonely.
Mm.
You're not with the other castmates. You're alone in a booth, and oftentimes you're seeing the script for the first time on that day.
Oh
So
my
Oh,
god.
wow. That's
it's almost, I mean, not all the time, and certainly if it's a Wonder Woman project, I get, I see it. And but a lot of times, there's not much, you're not seeing it that much in advance. And it's basic, it's a cold reading almost. It's like it goes up on the screen, and you're reading it. And it's you have to be good under pressure,
Mm.
especially if it's a big game, and they're like, let's go, let's knock this out, let's go. And it's a 4-hour session, and if it's a big game, your chances are you're there for the whole time. They're just so different, but they're all thrilling.
Yeah.
If it's a good director, good project, good people you're working with, a good ad team. And I've had a few of those that you just feel like, how lucky am I that this is the way I make money.
Hmm.
It's just brilliant. It's just brilliant. You just feel so damn fortunate that you get to do it.
That's awesome.
That's very, very cool. So this question was explicitly about auditions, but I'm kind of curious because you're talking about how the recording sessions for different media are different lengths. Like if you're doing it for a video game, you might be there for 4 hours,
Uh-huh.
whereas if it's something else, it might be shorter, maybe longer, whatever. So this is another 2-part. uh, but one, how do you prepare for auditions? Like whether it's I guess there's sort of 2 parts to that too. Like prepare sort of mentally, but also I sang for many many years. There's a warm up process. There's got to be the same thing for you as a voice actor as well. So I guess I'm kind of curious what your preparation is like for auditions and then also for actual recording sessions.
So it's interesting because that's another huge difference. So I used to go to my agent's office to audition, and
Interesting.
they had a director there, a voice director, and you would go in, get your copy, go prepare it, and then go into the booth with the voice director, and you would audition. And then they would, they
Wow.
were recording you and they were editing you and they would send it out back to the casting people. COVID changed that. So no one goes into an agency anymore. And so you're your
Mm.
own director. So you get the script and you read the specs, and then sometimes you just throw those away, and try to make it your own and try not to get too much in your head. It's challenging alone. It's really hard. And there have been nights where it's like, Susan, enough. Stop. Stop. It's not there. Or you got it
Mm.
an hour ago. Let it go. Um, the great thing about going to your ad agents, to your talent agency, is that there was somebody there that was directing you. You're directing yourself. It's a different ball game. But you just approach it like, you look at it, you try to give them what they're asking, and then you try to make it your own, and you try to sound like you're just natural. Which
Mm.
is why I'm in there for 2 hours. Damn it, I'm gonna sound natural if it kills me.
Yeah, that's especially I think having somebody else there to be like, "Hey, that was
Right.
great. Do an
No,
excellent
and you don't
job."
get feedback. So it's hard. It's hard, and you have to
Yeah.
choose your takes. You have to choose, like, do I like this take? Do I want to do this take? And sometimes I'm good at being objective, and other
Mm.
times I think I'm probably so shitty at it. So, we just but you just try to do your best. I mean, that's and then you let it go.
Mm.
Like I said, you send it in, you press send, and bye-bye. And now I'll do the next one.
Oof, I do not envy that.
And you can certainly get coaches, and you can certainly,
Mm.
there have been businesses that have popped up where they coach people. There are casting people who aren't doing what they were doing before COVID, and they're all teaching. So you can certainly work with people, that can help you with your audition. And I think that's important, to get
Mm.
that coaching.
Do you ever share your auditions with, I don't know, friends or other people? Never?
No, no, no. Once in a while, I have a very good friend who's at the same agency, and I'll text her, like, you know, a joke, or did you read for this, or what'd you think? And but no, I mean, I don't, no,
Hmm.
mm-mm, no.
Wow.
Wow. Were those both your questions, Ben?
Yeah, so one was about like prepping for
Yeah,
auditions, and the other one was sort of like how you prep
Hmm.
for recordings. But I mean, are they? Is it kind of similar for you, just in the sense of
yeah. You're reading the script, you're reading the
yeah?
copy. You know, I'm still looking for good vocal warm ups. So if you know any, Ben, as a singer, as a musician, you can maybe share them with me, because I'm always looking for things to, like. I can find that I can get in the booth, and the enunciation isn't there. I'm like
Mm.
swallowing my words, and I'm not. So, you do some little exercises to help yourself. And then I just try mostly just to relax,
Hmm.
just to relax, because I can feel if I'm, tense in any way. I feel it in my throat. I can feel the tension, and I just breathe.
Hmm.
I just, like, because I'm holding it, and holding the tension. So it's just relax. And I think one of the things, and I haven't had to do this in a while, but when I would go to a session, I would always take a minute, in front of the microphone before I started, even if they were like, okay, we're recording. That's not my cue. My cue is my body. My cue is my voice when I'm ready,
Hmm.
is to start then. And also to ask for another take, to say, hey, can I do that again? I think I have another one in me that's stronger. But I think you have to, one of the things you need to do is just not be afraid to make a fool of yourself. And it's easier, it's harder than it sounds. But the best voiceover actors, are just, raccoons,
I mean,
you know?
self-advocacy is so important, and I feel like that's sort of what you're saying, right? Is like, say what you need, say what you have. Don't start until you're ready. It's really like about, in a weird way, like being in tune with yourself and listening to yourself.
1,000%.
Mm,
Because who else is going to do that? I mean, like I said, you're just one piece of a very large puzzle. So if you're not looking out for you, and literally, that's finding your voice to say, to just take your time to breathe before you start, to ask for another take, to say, I'm not going to do the dragon because I just did a dragon
Hmm.
and I don't want to do another dragon back to back. That was hard doing that, but I just felt so clear that that was the right thing for me.
yeah.
And if it cost me the job, it cost me. Like I'm just never about, obviously being professional, but not at all
Yeah.
costs. I mean, not losing my voice or hurting, or
Mm.
worse, hurting my voice.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes total
Yeah, there's
sense.
being professional and there's knowing your limits. You know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is this one gig worth potentially, damaging your voice long term?
I don't think
Probably
anything
not.
is, frankly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Also, before we went live, you had kind of talked about doing a live radio show. I kind of want
Hmm.
to know a little bit more about that. Especially, you said you had mentioned there is a call-in portion.
Yeah. I was a guest on it. My friend James Enstel, who does Geek to Me Radio
Okay.
on social media, and he's a good friend. He has a Sunday night radio program, and maybe your dad even has been a guest on it. I bet he
Probably.
has. And it's so great because I joke with James that I'm like his co-host at this point because I've done it so many times because I love it, and we take live
Oh,
call-ins,
that's so
It's so
fun.
and
cool.
it's so fun because I started out in radio doing ads for my dad's business, but I would be in the room while my dad was chatting with this group of people. And they were talking about the local politics and business and what was going on and the community. And I just sat there like I didn't say anything. But I loved it. It made such an impression on my young mind and in my young heart that it has stayed with me to this day. And so radio is such a joy. And for a long time, I was part of a group of performers that we would get together and do these old, I don't know if you're familiar with suspense, but
Oh
they were,
yeah. My father is my father. I grew up on radio dramas. I listened to
there you
Jack
go.
Benny. I listened to
Right.
everything. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that,
Kitty's radio tastes are like
Yeah.
100
Yeah.
years out of date in the best
in the
possible
best
way.
possible way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, so I would do these radio dramas all the time based on suspense episodes, but
Ooh.
slightly redeveloped and rewritten. And it was like the most fun I've ever had. I always say, my goal is to do like a film noir on radio because that's where I really, I just think that would be glorious to be able
Yeah.
to do something like that throwbacky, with the Foley.
Yeah.
Here he comes.
Yeah.
That stuff. I love that. I can't get enough of that
When I
shit.
was little, that was what I wanted to do, and then I realized very quickly that there was not much of a market for that anymore.
What, Foley?
No, 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 like, voice acting for radio dramas like that,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, no. But I think that I think there's some people doing it. Some adaptations of novels and things like
So
that. And
cool.
I hope it becomes bigger. People are doing it. That's why I'm putting it out in the universe.
Yeah.
Here, right here on
I
your
I
show. Uh,
Well, I'll also
that's what
put it
I'd
out in
love
the
to do.
universe. If you're doing any radio dramas, I'd love to be considered.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good girl. Good girl.
Yeah, what audio I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and one of my
Yeah.
favorites is Gaiman's American Gods. And I think that that is
Uh-huh.
mostly because it is a fully casted audiobook, and
Yes.
it makes a
Yeah.
huge difference.
Audiobooks are a different, that's also part of the voiceover world. It's very different than any, we haven't talked about it. I don't do them. I've done one and it was,
Oh
Oh
no.
no. Oh no.
I've never done one. And it was Star Trek Discovery.
Okay.
Okay.
It was
Hmm,
about 850
that's a
pages
lot.
That's a lot of
of
pages.
names,
Oh.
like in the Star Trek,
Oh,
and I'm not a sci-fi
Mhm.
gal. My partner Mark is a sci-fi guy, so he tried to help me, but
It was tough. I imagine just going there. I feel like that's like going
That's
into
a
the
rich
freezer,
world.
like that's not just coming in cold. That's like
Woof.
It's going into the freezer, not coming in cold, Zeki. I love
Well,
that.
no, that's so true. It was going into the freezer. I'm going to steal that. And and the thing is that I know I have a lot of friends who do audiobooks and they're brilliant. And again, the acting chops. George Newbern, actually, Superman does a lot of audiobooks, a lot. And he plays all the
Mhm.
characters. He'll
Superman
be
does
the
a
rat.
lot of audiobooks is not a sentence I thought that I would hear.
No, Superman does a lot of audiobooks and he's real.
He's not just a journalist.
No, no, no. And he's really good at it. And he does, so he'll do like the guy from Lithuania, and then and then he's the Parisian guy, and he does all the voices. So it's not a cast of
Mhm.
people, it's that one person doing all the voices. And
Hmm.
A Jim Dale type.
so tremendous. So tremendous.
Yeah.
That is a whole other skill set to be able to do that. And you're by yourself, 6 hours a day. It's tough to break into. It's like loop groups. You loop groups are just like the best job in town, and good luck trying to get one.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I was going to ask about audiobooks because, like I mentioned, I listened to a lot of them. So I was wondering, I'm like, is
Yeah.
that something that you had experience with? So I'm glad we got to cover that.
Yeah, and it's not lucrative, and it's
Interesting.
a
Hmm.
lot of
Mhm.
work. And I think for people who do it regularly, they've managed to carve out a really good living for themselves. But it's a toughie.
Yeah,
Mm.
I feel
It's a
like that
toughie.
one is
You know,
especially loaded with some luck because you could end up like, you do a novel for an author and it's their first novel and all of a sudden it becomes
mhm,
like a bestseller and now they want
mhm,
you to come back. Like one of my favorite actors for this is James Marsters of Buffy fame. He does all of the
mhm.
Dresden File
Yeah.
books and there's over 17 of them,
Mm.
including like two
Woof.
short story compendiums, and he has read all of them except for one, which was like a weird Amazon thing. I don't know, but
Like Amazon the company, or Amazon like
uh,
the mascara?
that is
That's a good
that's a good
question.
That's
clarifying
a good
question.
clarifying question.
Amazon, the company, they ended up
Okay.
making the author Jim Butcher do the audio for it.
Oh,
I like that you said making as if you know for a fact he really didn't want to do it.
it was against his will.
I mean,
That's a huge, but one of the things besides beyond the luck, it's a tremendous skill set to be able to do that, and to have clarity of
mhm.
speech,
Mm.
to speak so distinctly, and to hold an audience with your voice through an
I
entire
Yeah.
book.
There are a couple audiobooks I remember from being a kid that I loved reading and I loved books. And the voice actors were so boring that I couldn't listen.
Yeah.
I would turn it
Yeah,
off.
I know it's gonna sound like blasphemous, but I don't like audiobooks because I need the page. I need to read it myself. I think they're brilliant if you're, going somewhere. My sister is constantly
Mhm.
listening to them, but it's not my jam.
Hmm.
I'm like a
It's
podcast junkie and I do a fair amount of
Me
driving for
too.
my job.
Me too.
So it
Yeah.
eventually formed into I'm running out of podcasts. What is some other long
Okay.
form audio that I can listen to? That's
Now that I
yeah.
understand. That I understand. Although I don't know how you ran out of podcasts, because it seems like there are what?
So
What?
many.
Hello?
Maybe ran out of podcasts that are worth
Yeah, that
listening
was
Yes.
that
to.
was where
Yes.
it was
Yeah,
at.
Talk about
'cause
bad
there are a
VO. There are some
lot.
podcasts out there and you're like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
kill me. I cannot listen to this person talk." I mean, it might be very interesting what they're saying, but they do not have a voice for podcast.
They have a voice for
Mm.
silent films, as I like to say.
Oh
Yes.
wow. Wow,
Yes.
Katie.
It's like saying you have a face for radio. Come on, I'm not the first person to say that. Oh.
Smash cut to Susan listening to one of our other episodes down the line, going, "Nope, that's the last one I ever
That's
listened to."
it.
I do kind of want to take, I don't want to say a sharp detour, but maybe like a soft left turn. And I'm
Okay.
I'm curious. Shut up, Ben. I see your face. I see what you're thinking. No, but I'm curious. when you and this is true of animation, but I think that this is probably especially true of video games. You are entering into very often with the way that the industry is now, a world that is super rich, but that is not
Mhm.
necessarily easy to just be like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna like read a book and then I'll kind of get the background." It's really embedded in playing the game, and a lot of times there are little Easter eggs and there are like full Wikipedia sites devoted to just lore for those worlds.
Mhm.
How do you tackle that? Is it sort of that you just kind of have to put a lot of that aside and go in with what you know about the character? Or do you try to educate yourself on the little minutia of these worlds that have, in many cases, existed for 10 years, 15 years, however long it's been?
I think a little background is obviously context is
Yeah,
important. I don't get bogged down in it because I don't know, like you have to contextualize it. You have to know what the history of your character is or the universe you're in and what's been going on. You don't want to fly blind. I mean, that's just silly. But at the same time, I don't get too bogged down in it either because as long as my imagination's turned on and I'm given some information that I can utilize, I'll make it happen.
hmm.
That's my job.
Do you ever play
Um,
through any of the games as research?
I don't.
Hmm.
I'm not a gamer. In fact, we have this thing where my nephews are, so they've played a lot of the games I've done. I we had this thing. I forget what Injustice. It was Injustice, I think. And they were like, "Hey, we're gonna do a live show on Facebook with all of you." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not a gamer." "No, you don't have to be a gamer." Blah, blah, blah. And we get there, and they're like handing me the
Oh
the
no!
Oh
controller,
Oh
no.
no!
and I was like, and of course I was with Phil, and Phil knew what to do. Phil is like the only legit. I mean, in Phil was the only person in the room who like actually knew what we were saying
Sure.
because he's such a comic book guy and a cartoon guy. But it would probably behoove me to be a fan of that. But I think that's
It's not your
it's not
thing.
me. It's not my thing. I mean, I'm so devoted to soap operas and daytime television.
Hmm.
It's like the love of just I love them so much I can't
You were
tell
gonna
you.
say Love of Your Life again, and now we're on number
I
3.
know. And then I realized it was my third time. I think I've gone months, maybe even years without saying that expression. Um, and then I've said it 3 times here. But yeah, I mean, it would probably be good for me to play the game.
You
Um,
could watch playthroughs. You don't have to
But
actually.
I do that.
Yeah.
I watch playthroughs, and I have done that many, many times. And it's interesting because there's a rhythm, like with Destiny. Destiny taught me how to talk to a player, and
Interesting.
it changed my life
Huh.
in that. All of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, I get this. Okay, so it's me and the player," and it was so phenomenal. So that there's a rhythm to it, and I dig it, and that's what I've like clung to when I've done every other video game. Yeah, it's just cool. It's just cool because I'm always thinking of the player and me talking to the player.
You might not be able to put it into words, but what does that look like? Like, what is that rhythm that you learned from Destiny?
It's just an attitude and it's a speech pattern. So
I'm sorry, I
I
don't mean
wish
to
I could.
stump you.
No, yeah, I don't feel stuck. I wish I could do it for you, but I can't think of a line to do it with. But it's just like you're imagining you're talking to this person who happens to be the player, and it just feels intimate, and you're with them, moving through this world, and that helped me enormously
Hmm.
doing that
Hmm.
game because it stayed with me because I was always aware of the player
Hmm.
and talking to them, talking to other characters, of course, but always with the player in mind. And I do a game called DCU Online game, and I play Wonder Woman in it. And the people who do the game, who started it, they were huge Justice League fans. So there's a lot of Justice League Diana in DCU Online game, and it's just that it's just such a comfortable fit, right? So having done Destiny, anytime I have to talk to a player or talk to the player. It just, I love it.
Hmm.
I love it, love it, love it.
Do you visualize almost like having a conversation with sort of that faceless player when you're delivering those lines
Yes,
to kind of help like solidify
yes.
it? Interesting. I'm gonna fire up Destiny after this and go like listen to a bunch of voice lines with a totally different
I'm the
perspective now.
human player. There are two others, but I'm the human one.
Okay.
Cool.
I'll create a new
And
character
and it's
just
so
just
funny
to hear you
because when I
talk to
went
me.
to do the job, and by the way, I never auditioned. To this day, I don't know how I got that job.
Really?
No idea.
Hmm.
I
That's
just
so
showed up,
interesting.
and I said to the director, I said, "So what voice, what would you like me to sound like?" And he said, "So the voice you're using now?" And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, that's it." And I said, "God, I feel lucky."
Yeah.
Like
That's
I don't
so
have to
cool.
strain. I don't have to go low. I don't have to go high. I don't have to. It was like my speaking voice. So oof,
That's
very
awesome.
lucky. Awesome.
It's
You
amazing.
did say something that I need to ask about. So you said that there's a bit of the Justice League Diana in the game. How many Dianas do you have?
Well, I have several because Injustice Diana is a totally different Diana than Justice League. And, I don't, she's not the same person for me, and my favorite, I don't like the dark side of the comics
Mm.
and the cartoons. I prefer playing heroes as heroes. So, where some people love to play the villain, and villains are fabulous, I just don't like playing Diana as a villain.
Right.
That was really hard for me in
Hmm.
Injustice. And I made the director and the writer promise to like hire me for something that was heroic after that. Because it was hard. It doesn't come naturally to me to play her as a Mimi. And, like the badassery is one thing, but just like she's so, so it's a totally different character than Diana, talking to Bruce,
Mhm.
Mm.
Batman, or Jean, or.
Yeah, that makes
Hmm.
sense.
So I maybe have three that I know of, but it's like personalities. There may be others, but I'm aware of three different Dianas.
That's so cool. That's
Hmm.
really, really cool.
I guess this brings us to our last
Written question.
fully scripted
Okay.
question. Not really scripted. I I've been taking notes as we've been going along. Um, what is your dream project?
I'd like to do a podcast.
Oh,
Nailed it.
yes.
Oh, yes. Check it off the list, baby. Let's go.
I think I would love to do the audio drama.
Mm.
I would love to, with an ensemble that we work together and we do all these different characters. That would be joyful to be able to do that. And you're playing and I love that era. I love the 40s and 50s. I love film noir and the drama of it all. And I would love to do something like that. And I put it out on Twitter the other day, that I would love to do it because there's some celebrities doing a couple of projects.
Cool.
And it's I know a lot of people at my level who would love to do that stuff. So that's what I want to focus on. And also I just would love, doing something that feels collaborative,
Mm.
that's something I'd love to do. I'd love to be part of something that you feel like your voice is part of something that makes a difference and that is you're on the team
Yeah.
in a real way, in a real way.
Yeah.
So I'm looking and putting it out there to people. So who knows? Yeah, right. 2023,
It's
baby.
your year.
Let's get
The
it.
year of audio drama making a comeback.
It would be sweet. It would be sweet. I'd
Oh,
love
that'd
it.
be
I love
Very
it.
cool.
And radio programs. I just love that
Me
stuff.
too.
Live. Right. So Katie, so maybe it's time for us to create
Let's
something.
do it. I'm ready.
I'm ready too. I'm
Let's get
definitely ready.
scripting.
You're speaking to the child in me. Like truly growing up, I did not watch a lot of television. I did not play on the computer a lot. I listened to radio dramas and live radio
Mhm.
performances from like the 30s, 40s, and 50s all the time. That was just
Yeah. Well, your dad did good
yeah.
then.
Yeah, he did. He jokes that Cody and I are the only two people under like 70 that know who Jack Benny is.
It's funny because I think some of us are just older souls in that way. I remember my first concert, and you may not know these people, but it was Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet, Steve and Edie, and they were my first concert. And
Mm.
my parents took me, and I was 11, I
Yeah.
think, and mom and dad were just like, "Who are you?" Because none of my family gave, like they would just look at me, and I would be listening to Sinatra, at such a young
Mm.
age, watching Johnny Carson at such a young
Yeah.
age, being up late, sneaking in. So, I just think some of us are older souls with that stuff. And, you either are exposed to it from a parent or you find it, you figure it out, you find it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree
Mhm.
with that. On that, oh,
I
nope.
actually had a. I was gonna say I have like a sort of an extra little thing I want to throw in there because you mentioned like film noir and such, and so I was gonna ask if you. So let's say you have the opportunity, but they haven't picked necessarily a setting or a genre within that scope. Like, is there like a specific genre? Like, do you want to do like truly like a I don't know. The one that comes to mind for me when I think of film noir was like private detective,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. Like, is there a maybe it's a trope or maybe it's a fully a setting or a genre that you would really love for it to be even beyond just a radio
Oh
drama?
yeah, the mystery, the
Yeah.
the blackmail. Oh, you had me at blackmail. I mean,
Love
yes,
blackmail.
m- murder. He was murdered. Any of that stuff. Just that dark, twisted, you know, drama. I eat that stuff up. And, I tend to watch a lot of film noir. I mean, that's something that Mark
Hmm.
and I watch constantly.
Keep saying Mark, and
So,
I keep thinking you're talking about my dad, but you're not. You're not.
right? Which is a good
You guys
That
are
is
thing.
watching so
good.
many movies
Well, for a
together.
second, I was like, are they doing watch parties? Like, is my dad getting
I
good
know.
with Chrome extension?
That's so funny.
Oh,
That's so funny. I don't know your dad is Mark.
yeah. What do you, oh, do you know him as JM?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For all of
Uh,
his friends outside of work, he's Mark.
The funny thing is I always try to mention writers when I do interviews. And I remember having to pronounce your dad's name for the first time, and I
Mhm.
think I was sweating because I didn't want to fuck it up. And yet, you have to, because again, you're not going to change the lines of people like your father, like Stan Berkowitz, Rich Fogel, Dwayne McDuffie. You're not going to change it. And I always feel like it's important to say names, but sometimes, like with your dad's name, I was like, I've never said his name out loud, you know? And then you just get all nervous, like, I'm going to pronounce this wrong. How do you pronounce it?
Doesn't
So it's
help that
easy
there are
when
multiple pronunciations running around of our last name. So whatever you did, I'm sure was fine.
I think it was okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You said you love watching film noir with your Mark.
My mark. So yeah, so we watch them all the time. So like the idea of you don't need to see it. You can just hear it
Yeah.
and bring it to life that way. And because God knows I don't want to be on camera. That's not a goal of mine ever.
Yeah.
It's just to be in front of a mic telling a story.
What's your favorite noir? If I can sneak in with an extra micro question.
ooh.
Well, probably Double Indemnity
Okay.
is up
Okay.
there. you
Yeah.
know. But there's too many. I mean, seriously, we have Patterns is a brilliant
Hmm.
noir, written by oh
I'm
god,
forgetting a lot of
I'm
my
gonna forget
noir
his name.
author names. I listened to a whole book about like the Depression era, like reconstruction in the arts specifically, and a lot of that
Yeah.
was like,
Are you talking about Patterns by Rod Serling? Okay.
Yes.
I love Rod Serling. Rod Serling's another
Oh,
just like deep-hearted favorite of mine.
oh,
yeah.
he's
I mean, Twilight Zone, come
amazing,
on.
and he wrote that noir film, and if it's a masterpiece, because of the script. I mean, the performances are brilliant also, but the script is just like you're just blown away. And I remember thinking, wow, he wrote this?
Mm,
Because I wasn't used to him writing that kind of story.
yeah.
It's so good. So yeah, kids, if you're not busy tonight, oh no, it's late for you guys already. Um, anyway, so yeah, so there are a lot that I just love. There's so many available to watch. So it's like we've gone through the
Hmm.
library
Yeah.
night by night by night.
That's excellent.
That's awesome. Susan, where can people find you if they want to follow you on social media, if they want to take a look at some of the work that you've done in the past?
Katie, they can find me at Susan Eisenberg 1 on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on a bunch of stuff now because there are all these other platforms. So I joined all of them, but I don't use any of them because it's like repeating myself in 7 places.
Yeah.
Like, it feels a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I don't have the
Mhm.
time. Like, and then I have a website, SusanEisenbergVoice.com,
Awesome.
where there's some orange in that, if anyone wants to check that out. Yeah, and that has like my upcoming cons and where I'll be and
Any cons
all of that.
upcoming you want to plug?
Yeah, so I have one coming up at the end of the month in Orlando, March 30th, and then I'll be doing another one at the end of April, but it hasn't been announced yet. But I will be going to New Jersey, I believe in
Okay.
June. So if you check out I'm gonna be posting them, so I'll let people know.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for inviting me. I was really touched. It was really touching. So thank you for having me
you.
Thank you
on.
for being here, Susan.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for
Yeah,
our,
this was amazing.
first
This was
episode.
so
This
much
was so
fun.
cool.
And with that, Ben and Zeki, we had a conversation earlier this evening that we don't have a sign off yet. So
Oh.
with that, we say, how the fuck do you sign off from a podcast?